Okay. Next presenter is Marco Brianza from Italy.
Hello. Hello, this is the title that Dick assigned me. Visual domination of media screens with commercial content in public space, invasion of artists. I added an S because as development, I would think this is could be an interesting, let's say, expansion, and I use the screen not just like once per year. My presentation will need to go next one. Okay, this is the slide called Find Differences, and Los Angeles 2019, that's the opening frame of Blade Runner, and here is what I found when I came here a couple of days ago in Helsinki, January 2019. I think there are some similarities, but it's just to, let's say, start the discussion. But, well, I think we are still on time, because we see the next slide. We see that there are places who are, like, where there is an invasion that's a little bit more, let's say, more advanced. Okay, next. Next slide. Okay, what I want to talk in this presentation is how what's behind my philosophy that took me to make the piece that's called Moonlight. So sometimes I consider myself a photographer, but if I say this to people, they don't really understand. They think I make things that they get printed on paper. Instead, I tried this morning to modify it and say photo filler, so and photosopher, something like somebody who likes light, who studies light, and because, you know, photo, it means light in Greek. So this is a little bit of my background. And I think that studying light is something that can help you to then make something interesting with it, because you know it very well. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is a piece of 10 years ago. It was called The Longest Day Replay. So I wanted to create a photography that was in absolute light. So it means that I would record for the whole day light with a luxmeter and a webcam that uses a colorimeter. So I did the recording on the computer. Next slide. Then I created a lamp that could reproduce this absolute light. And then with the next slide, you will see that I projected it on a cube. So this is a sort of photography of light and a study of light that I do to understand. For example, this was for daylight. It's called The Longest Day Replay, because after that I recorded, you could replay and select on the computer, for example, the time of the day. Say, what is the light? And the lamp could reproduce intensity up to 100,000 lux and the color variation for an early sunset or so. Okay, next slide. Yeah, this was for natural light. That's the thing I started studying. But then, we are in a situation today with all screens produce light. So the content we see on screens, these are small screens for indoor, but also we saw for outdoor screen, they produce light. And this is I mean, this is maybe a sort of side effect, but we have to take it into account. So I also started studying what happens, how is light that comes from artificial screens? How is light coming from movies, for example? We see the next slide. So this is a couple of sequences that let you understand how media that we consider a media, for example, of an image, it's also a media of light. So light can travel through media and come back. So this is a frame from Vertigo from Alfred Hitchcock, where is this neon sign. Next slide. We have this light that gets into the home of the movie. Next slide. And we see all the scene is green. Okay, the next. And I'll say that the movie happens in a whole room, not just in the screen. So we have a lighting device. And this is a bit what I consider also the media stream there. And this is why having this in mind, having this study in mind, I know that media screen can produce light, and that's why I made my piece. So what I do to study this kind of light in the next one, I take photographs, for example, of the wall. So if the screen is projected here, you see the movie. Maybe I take the pictures of the wall opposite, a white wall opposite to the movie, so to capture the light of the room. Next one. So, and with software I made software collage with small pieces, even one line of pixel. And so we see the color of the room that's generated by me that changes over time. Okay, next slide. So for example, this is the scene of that movie. You see all the variations that mainly are in the green area because of that neon sign. So we are using media and we are getting a neon sign back in our room. So this is quite fascinating, the fact that you can transport light through media. Next slide, we see all the movie. So what we were seeing before was just this scene. I also printed this so you can see what happens in all the movie, who's very characterized, and you see by green and reds for an author decision. Okay, now, next slide, we see what happens here outside. So I have recorded, the first day I came here, recorded the snow. I made a movie of 90 seconds, and when there was advertising. So in 90 seconds, you see all the flashes you have, all the variations of light. So this is basically, if you see it this way, it's a lamp that flashes in this way very, very quickly. When there is advertising, then there is some little bit calmer part. When there is maybe a static image. But anyway, in 90 seconds, you are very much flashed. Okay. Next slide. Okay, so based on that, I already knew what was going to happen because the proposal to make this exhibition was by Ika when he sent me a video of the screen more than one year ago, and I saw already the environment that was already flashy and sort of light polluted, I would say. And so I decided to present a type of light that I would like to see in the city instead of that light. So this is why I decided to use moonlight. So in fact the subject is the moon, as I told you before. This is a media, so it's but it's representing light, as I saw before, because photography is the recording of light in my way of seeing it. In the next slide, we see that I gradually transform, because in that way, if I just put the moon, then it's still an image. So it's not a lamp. My intention was to make it become a lamp. So because the screen can become it, and so I made an algorithm, so I was swapping the pixel 2 at a time. I will show you also the algorithm later. If we go to the next slide, we see that at the end, all the pixels of the image are scrambled, and it's becoming a lamp that is lighting the environment. Okay, next one. This is what happens. I recorded it last night in 360 seconds, recording still the snow below the screen. Are the variations. You know, the horizontal line are because there are some irregularity in the snow, but you see basically what happens in the variations of light. So since there are many moons, I have used moons of different colors. This is how the color changes in that space in front of the screen. You see, mostly slowly and smoothly. Okay, next one. Yeah, this is the 100 moons that I used. I've gathered them on Flickr with royalty-free rights. The original intention was that people could post and tag their own image, maybe on Instagram, but then it was a bit too complex to manage here, because I had to connect my computer to the screen, which was sort of taboo, and so we didn't do it. But so I checked, so I selected these 100 moons that play and render the video of 2 hours and a half that loops once, so you can see it 2 times. The original intention was that it's going to be an algorithm that crunches images that it finds in a folder, and then it can go on forever with it, always be different. But here for the festival, as a sort of concept and prototype, I think it was okay. In the next slide, we see instead of the scrambled image that I say to see all the possible colors of these moons. You know, some look a little bit artificial, maybe they are. This is what happens in media. Media alter the content, they are not perfect, and so they take their own sort of personality. So if someone sees the moon that's that orange, maybe it's like that, maybe it's his feeling, but also the feelings of people to see it can, let's say, can pass through the media. Okay, the next one. This is a bit the algorithm. If you want to see, it's super simple. Even it's written like a sort of educational way, but basically it's the one that says take a random pixel from the image, take another one, then exchange the content, and then put it back in the image. I do it very quickly, and so you see it like if you saw it in these days, you see what was happening. Okay, next one. Yeah, after I did this piece, everything was finished. I discovered that a novel from an Italian writer is called Italo Calvino, who in 1963 wrote a novel of a family that was living in the upper part of a building, where on top of on the house in front there was a neon sign of advertising that was on for 20 seconds and off for 20 seconds. And the difference was that when they would see the sign, they wouldn't see anymore the moon and the stars. So it is basically like 50 years later, I've got the same idea or the same feeling that what was happening from advertising was, let's say, canceling the moon and the stars. Okay, next one. Okay, now this is what I've done. I told you a bit of background. My approach was a bit drastic, meaning that media screens are a lamp. This is I think, interesting. It needs to open the mind, but I think you are a city that's very advanced. I see this library who is super, let's say, open to collaboration with people, 3D printers, it's super cool. And so I think that you can also open the screen to people and use it as public art display. Maybe, I don't know, you start for 1 hour a day for it, and make it an aggregation point of the city. How is this area? This is an aggregation point, because I see people coming in the library to do their own stuff with their computer. And so maybe this screen, this is what it can do. This is my proposal. Make it an aggregation point for the city and not just for sending advertisement. Of course, this must be curated, and I also think that now it's unavoidable to have an online link with it. So, and the thing that I would like to see on the screens, it's like you don't have to have quick loops, because I think they are most disturbing. The thing we had in at the beginning, that's happening now basically. And I like to see generative visuals that produce undefined results, like in nature. If we see in the next couple of slides, we see this is an interesting situation. This is a generative visual. In this case, it was still a video for the festival, but in theory, this is a thing that can run forever. This is from Nico. And for example, in the next slide, we see, for example, that Zach posts every day a sketch that's even square, which is also adaptable to the screen, and maybe this kind of sketch can go on the big screen even. Okay, next one, it's the one where I say Kitos for inviting me, with a fantastic photo of our curator.
Thank you, Marco. Any questions, Marco?